Council, if you will come to order. It is February the 25th. It is 7 p.m. and we do have a quorum. So I call our meeting of February the 25th to order. In just a minute, I'll ask everyone to stand. We'll be led in an invocation by Pastor Brooks of Lake City's Church of Christ. I said in just a minute I'll ask you to stand. But stay standing. I'm almost through. And then stay standing for the pledges to the American flag and the Texas flag. All right. And Councilmember Garassi will lead us in the pledges. Pastor?
Let's bow together. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Michael?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You may be seated. So I saw one person who turned around, kind of looking for how come the council isn't facing the flags. But there are flags back there, and we did that on purpose so that we didn't have to turn our backs to you as you're saying the pledge. So we could actually watch and see who actually said the pledge. And I was watching all the scouts to see if they really were doing it. And for most of them, I've already given you a test tonight, right? So we'll see if I can come up with another test. It is time for citizens' presentations. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on any matter, whether or not it is posted on the agenda. The council is not permitted to take action on or discuss any presentations made to council at this time concerning an item not listed on the agenda. The council will hear presentations on specific agenda items prior to the council addressing those items. You may speak up to 4 minutes or a time limit determined by the mayor or presiding officer. To speak during this item, you must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics of your statement. Topics of presentation should be limited to matters over which the council has authority. I see that we had at this point, one person sign up to speak, and that is Ms. Karen Williams. Ms. Williams, come to the microphone and state your name and your address, and then you have the floor.
Okay. My name is Karen Williams. I live at 2516 Trophy Club Drive. I am here speaking on behalf of the pickleball players of Trophy Club. We have a number of players in attendance today, and I would like them to stand for a moment to be recognized. Hey, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in America, with over 2.8 million players. It's truly a sport for all, and we have players in Trophy Club that are from 10 years old to 78 years old. The reason why it's so popular is that it's really easy to pick up, there's not much equipment, it's as competitive as one chooses, and it's actually just a lot of fun. Currently, we have 45 plus people that regularly attend our scheduled reserve days on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. During the week, both courts at Harmony Park are in constant use at all hours, not only for the 2 hours of allotted time for pickleball. Because the game is so popular, on weekends the courts are completely full and overloaded. We usually have 6 to 10 people who are waiting to play at any one time. Sadly, we've lost some players because they just give up and they go home or they go to other towns because we do not have a dedicated court for people to play on. On a positive note, though, we have entire families that come out and play. Many couples, singles, friends, and even during holiday breaks, college kids and out-of-town guests show up and jump right in. There's no experience necessary. All players are very welcoming to new players. For an example, just about a month ago, we had 2 tennis players show up during our allotted pickleball reserve time. So we invited them to learn the game and lent them our paddles. They loved the game so much that they joined our group and have caught the pickleball bug. It should also be noted that the area middle schools and high schools now are playing pickleball as well, and they have clubs Byron Nelson has a club that has 65 members, and Medlin has a club that has 35 members. Unfortunately, Trophy Club has no actual regulation pickleball courts. All of the courts our town currently has are tennis courts, and they are just lined for pickleball, using the tennis court nets, which are not at the correct height. With such a growing demand and enthusiasm for the sport, I am here tonight to urgently request the town to take action to research installing pickleball courts, which include regulation nets. Last month, we brought our request to the Parks and Recreation Board, and it is our understanding that there's been some preliminary discussions. We would like to ask the council if you would support and direct an official request for proposal. We all believe that the addition of pickleball courts would enhance our parks and recreation programs and benefit all the residents of Trophy Club. We thank you for your positive consideration. We would be happy to answer any questions or be of assistance in any planning. And please know that you are all welcome to come out and play pickleball and see for yourselves how the sport promotes health, friendship, and community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. So just to make sure that everyone is aware, the Trophy Club Park and Recs Board will be considering a discussion about this topic and hopefully drafting a recommendation to council. That meeting is on March the 16th. So just be aware that how we try to get things to work in Trophy Club is that we have volunteer boards and commissions. We try to get them to evaluate ideas and come up with recommendations and bring those before council so that some research has been done in advance. In addition, our Park and Recs director is very much involved in some of those discussions and trying to look for some solutions. So that'll be the next steps that we will kind of go through a process to accomplish. But thank you very much for coming. Did anyone else wish to speak at this time on a matter on the agenda or not? All right. And so I told one of the scouts that they were going to have to make a presentation. They're here tonight working on 2 merit badges, communications and citizenship in the community. Is that right? So you've shown your citizenship because you're here at a council meeting. You haven't really shown your speaking ability. But if anyone really wanted to speak to council, I would recognize you and let you come talk to us. You have 4 minutes. I'm sure it would get you the badge if you did it. Well, I guess not. Well, thank you for considering that. Item number 1, receive town manager's update and provide input regarding the following. Town manager Norwood will make that presentation.
Mayor and council, we've completed the first week of early voting for Denton County at the MUD buildings. Tarrant County is done at the South Lake Town Hall, so we'll have another week for more early voting. Also, marquees that are at our 3 major entrances into the community. There's been some discussion and I guess some questions regarding the brightness of those. We have finally had the contractor turn those over to us. They feel they have completed what they need to do. They're not finished by any means. There's still stonework left to do. But as far as the actual monitors display are concerned, we've got the timing worked out. We've addressed the daylight issue, and then this evening staff will be out there looking at the brightness factor when it's dark. So hopefully we can put that to bed and get that moving on down the road. And finally, today is the last meeting for Sharon David, who has filled in and has done an outstanding job. And not only was it a kind of a spur of the moment for her, but also to have elections going on at the same time made it a double challenge. So Leticia Vasic, who is the new town secretary, will start March 9th. And then we will not have our first meeting of the month on March 10th. That will be March 24th. So I guess this is officially Sharon's last meeting, so thank you, council. You made a good interim hire there and also a good permanent hire. So thank you to Sharon and all that she's done in a short period of time. So
Sharon, on behalf of the council, thank you so very much. So now I think Sharon's decided that she wants to go after municipal clerk certification, is that right? Oh, she laughed. Okay, well, I guess I was misinformed.
That was a good laugh. No?
I did have a question on
Yes, Sean?
the sign on Trophy Lakes Drive, the brightness, and it seemed like it was split down the middle, like half of it was dimming and then the other half was bright. Did you guys, do you know, did they get it fixed?
It's been fixed, yes.
All right,
Okay.
that's it.
We were out there this morning, it's fixed.
All right. Any other questions in reference to the town manager's report? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. It is time for consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and be considered separately. We have items 2 through 4. Anybody wish to remove any of those items?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda items 2 through 4.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Bone and a second by Monger. All in favor, show your hands. It is unanimous. Item 5, receive an update on the 2020 census, and Chris Carruthers with the Census Bureau is maybe here, whoever he's worked with, the Dallas Regional Census Center. Okay. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sanders and Council. I've had an opportunity to meet with several of your staff members, the Assistant City Manager, as well as one of the sergeants in the police department. So have had an opportunity to touch Trophy Club in a little bit. But we do have the census coming up. It is 2020. We are actually on the eve of the census. We've been working on it for a long time. I'm actually one of the senior-most people in the Bureau as far as the census goes because I've been on staff for a whole year. So the Census Bureau goes from one of the smallest bureaus in the government to one of the largest employers in the entire United States, and then back down to zero in about 18 months. So if you're talking to somebody that's been working for them for a year, we're one of the senior people. So we do have the census coming up. And why do we do the census? We do the census for 2 reasons. One is to determine representation in the House of Congress. And so that is actually in the Constitution. The first census was done in 1790 so that they could tell who was in the United States and they could determine how many representatives each state got. And so
That's the first question on the test for citizenship of community, right? What was the year?
there you go.
Yeah, okay.
What year was it? All right. All these scouts make me feel at home because I'm an Eagle Scout too. So in 2010, as you can see there on the map, Texas did pick up 3 seats in the 2010 census, and they're expecting that will probably be close to about the same this time around as well, that we'll probably pick up another 3 to 4 seats because, as everybody knows, everybody's moving here. So the other thing about the census that's incredibly important is that we do keep all of our information confidential. It is not shared within the government. It is not shared with any other agency. It is not allowed to be given out to the public in any way, shape, or form. And everyone who works for the census doesn't take a pledge just for the time they work for the census. They take a lifetime pledge that they will not release any personally identifiable information. And if they do, it's 5 years and $250,000 per offense. So they're very serious about it. The other reason that we do the census is distribution of federal funds. And this is what touches everyone's life almost every day, because the federal funds include money for school lunches, for hospitals, for roads, for water, for just about everything you can think of in our community has been touched at some point by federal funding. And that is based on the numbers that we generate with the Census Bureau. In 2020, it'll be the first time that it's online. So this year, we had to make sure that our information was going to be safe and it was going to be secure. But this year, instead of everyone getting a paper form, we're actually in about 3 weeks, March 12th, everyone's going to start getting at in flights, cards sent to their house, and you'll have a code on it. You'll go online with the code and fill out the form there online. Everybody's going to get the first mailing, which is the card, and then the second mailing, which is a reminder, and then there's a third, fourth, and fifth mailing, which are reminder mailings if you haven't filled out the form. On the fifth mailing, you'll actually get a paper form sent to your house. So here we are. We've done a lot of these efforts already. Address canvassing was in back last year. We went throughout the country to make sure that the addresses on our list matched houses and residences on the ground and vice versa, to make sure that when we sent out the cards, it was as accurate as possible. And we're getting really close there to Census Day, but self-response starts, it says March 23rd, but it's actually been updated to March 12th. So one of the reasons that we want to make sure that everyone knows when we are going to start doing this process is because, for example, the police department needs to know when we're going to be in the field, and we'll start that towards the end of April, because there are already some reports of people going door to door that are not census employees and are pretending to be census employees and trying to get information in false ways from people. So if anybody ever comes to your door and says they're a census and they've asked for your driver's license or your social security or how much money you make or any of your bank account information or a donation, any of those things, we will never ask those questions. So if they ask those questions, close the door, call the police. That's absolutely what you're supposed to do. We even have an email set up because there have been so many misinformation out there that you can email the census at rumors@2020census.gov for all the rumors that are out there. That's how many there are out there. So right now we're recruiting. We're still hiring hundreds of thousands of people across the country to be those people that go door to door if you have not responded to the census. So that is happening, but that will be closing here shortly because at some point we have to close the door because we're going to be putting everybody through background checks, and that takes about 6 to 8 weeks sometimes. And if they're going to be working starting the end of April, then we need to get that done as soon as possible. Then there's national initiatives that we're working on. Statistics in schools is going to be the first week of March. LGBTQ is another one because that's a hard to count group in our population. And then the faith community, the last weekend of March, we're asking all faith communities as our partners to highlight the census in their community so that we can get the word out as much as possible. A complete count committee is something that some towns are doing to focus on the areas of their city that are not responsive to the census, but to make sure that the head counts are as accurate as possible. And that's usually done out of the mayor's office. A lot of the small towns and cities, such as Trophy Club, are choosing not to do complete count committees, and especially Trophy Club, you are not in an area that we consider a hard to count area or an area that doesn't respond well to the census. Your town actually responds very well to the census, and so it wouldn't really be that beneficial for Trophy Club. So this is the map that we use to determine where we're going to focus our efforts. If you look in the upper left corner, you can see a gray blob that kind of does like that. That's DFW Airport, so that gives you a little understanding of where you are. This is called ROAM, which is Response Outreach Area Mapper, and what it does is it breaks down our town and our cities into smaller groups. And so each of those dark blue areas are areas that do not respond well to the census. And that's where the complete count committees of the different cities will focus their efforts to try to raise the response rates for folks that live in those areas. If you look at the box there, the census tract 115 that's highlighted, the low response area is 33%. So 33% of the people in that small area of South Dallas did not respond to the census the last time around. And that makes an enormous impact because the areas that are lower economically tend to be the areas that don't respond well to the census. And when they don't respond well to the census, then they don't get the funding into their communities to help revitalize their area. So it's a negative cycle, and we really want to try to break that cycle. So we do have several hard-to-count groups within our population. Some you might guess on your own, which are those folks for whom English is not their first language, or people who might have questions about their immigration status. And other groups that are hard to count, LGBTQ, college students, because college students think, well, mom and dad are going to put me on their form back home. They're actually supposed to be on their form where they are going to school. But one group that people don't think about is children under 5 were undercounted by 1 million children in 2010. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Some of it is that there are 2-parent households or 1-parent households, and One parent thinks the child's going to be on their form, the other parent thinks the child's going to be on their form, and then nobody puts the child on their form, for example. And if you think about it, the next time we do a census, if a child is an infant this time around, the next time we do a census, that child's going to be in 4th grade and already possibly using resources. They're going to be going to school. They're going to be drinking water. They're going to be, you know, who knows what it is. And so we want to make sure those counts are as accurate as possible. So if you want to apply for a job, we are still looking, as I said, this is the website, 2020census.gov/jobs. You have to be 18 years old. It starts about $23 an hour. They want you to commit to do at least 10 hours a week. And so even if you have a full-time job, if you're a stay-at-home person, if you're retired, something that has a little extra time on your hands, do 10 hours a week, help your community, help the country, and make a little money on the side. So you can help. What we're still looking for, in addition to the jobs, is partners, and that is organizations within the community, businesses, schools, hospitals, churches, anything that is an organization in the community that could help us get the word out about the census coming up. And to be a partner, that means you send out emails, you put something on social media, you link your website to our website, you host training events, any of those kinds of things, or participate in the events that are going to be happening in your community. And there's my contact information. I try to keep it short and sweet.
Thank you very much. So I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
The town has an ordinance about solicitation,
Okay.
that you're supposed to actually come register with the town and get a name badge kind of thing. I assume everybody that goes door to door doing something would have an ID?
They are. They will have an ID. It won't look this fancy because we're having so many that are being hired temporary. There will be actually a paper badge. But they will have a satchel that will say U.S. Census on it, and they'll have an iPad with them as well. And they should always identify themselves as census employees before they start asking questions.
Would they have business cards?
Not
or something
necessarily.
like that? Okay. And so, do you see it of value, or Steve and Patrick, that the group that's going to do door-to-door counting here actually register in some fashion? It's something to think about. Can get back with Chris about that. Because we have this solicitation ordinance, people will call and say, this person came to my door and they didn't have ID. And so it starts the process of who is that, why are they here? And then officers will go out and try to see what are they doing.
Sure.
So if they're coming, I think you said you're going to let us know when they start
Yes, sir.
doing that.
Yes, sir.
And so you're already talking to either the town manager or the police chief about that?
Yes, sir.
Or someone is?
Yes, I've spoken with the assistant city manager and one of the sergeants in the police department. Yes, sir.
And we can sure take a look at that, but most cities have a peddler's permit or no solicitation, and that's typically to address people that are selling
Yes.
items, and you're not selling anything, so.
It's a
but
federal survey, right?
But we'll definitely work that out and then do a campaign with our marketing department.
Okay, good. Anybody else have any questions? I don't see anyone wanting to speak. Any citizens want to ask a question? All right, don't see anybody wanting to. All those scouts back there, Shirley, you want to ask a question? No, they don't. Okay. But I'm sure their leaders have learned something to ask them.
Sure.
All right, okay.
And I've also offered to do a presentation for them because I've got a soft spot in my heart for scouts, and my son is in the pack here at the Methodist Church, so.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate you coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you for the
Thanks.
opportunity.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
All right, item number 6, receive an update from our public services regarding trash services and current contract. Steve, are you going to begin, or is Jerry going to begin?
I'll just introduce Jerry Harwell with Republic, has been with the company for several years and has handled Trophy Club for a good portion of that time. And we are nearing the end of our existing contract, and Jerry will go over briefly just kind of where we stand as far as when this is coming due and maybe some next steps going forward in the near future.
Thank you for coming tonight, Jerry.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So just quickly, because I said I would keep this really quick, your contract expires April 30th. we need to start looking at what we're gonna do for the future. And I do have a short presentation, just to kind of give you an idea of where we are. You've got, currently free service at all town facilities, free, services at all town events. So no matter how many events you have a year, you've got free service for that. Christmas tree recycling, you have a franchise fee that is included in your current rates at 12%. No increase to trash rates for residential or commercial. Council approved a recycle increase in 2018. Spring and fall cleanups, including household hazardous waste, electronics recycling, document shredding, metal recycling, and bulk disposal. And then current service level is twice per week trash, bags or customer containers, once per week recycle, 18-gallon bins, limit of 2. Limit of 2 is actually in your contract, but I promise you, there's a lot of houses that have a lot more than 2. Your current residential rate is $12.37 for trash, $3.77 for recycle. The 12% franchise fee is included in that. In 2010, we lowered the franchise fee to 6%, and then we did a fourth modification to agreement to include no annual PI, and trash rates have remained the same. 2015, council changed franchise fee back to 12%. In 2018, council approved $1.20 on the recycle based on the current conditions of recycle. Well, at the time in 2018, it has done nothing but deteriorate since then. In 2014, we took over the HHW events that we hold twice per year. And 2010, original contract and renewal included the builder containers to assist in offsetting residential pricing. I bring that up because as you are just about built out in Trophy Club, then you're not getting those franchise fees and we're not recognizing that revenue. So if we do begin to talk about a new contract, that will absolutely be factored into that. You know, there's a million different service options out there. I will say that in my tenure with Republic Services and Trophy Club, your residents seem very happy with the current level of service. We've talked about other levels of service in the past, and I just don't think that we need to go there. I think your residents are very pleased with the service that they received today. I will tell you one thing, that if you were to vote to take away the 2 cleanups per year, I would have to get somebody else to fill in for me, because I think I would be chased down the road with sticks and stones being thrown at me. That is a very well-attended event. In 2 hours, we processed 250 cars at your last event. So it is very well attended. It is something that, with the document shredding and the HHW, I would think at this point we've gotten all of the paint out of Trophy Club. No, we haven't. So a couple of things to consider as we look at moving forward. Your industrial has decreased, as I just spoke about. You've not had a price increase on the trash or the commercial and industrial rates in 5 years. The annual cleanups, I recommend that we actually expand that from 2 hours to 3 hours, so that we can kind of open that up just a little bit so everybody doesn't feel like they have to get there in the first 15 minutes. There are a lot of cities around you that have gone to once a week service. I'm not sure that that's something that we would really want to consider, but I do have to throw it out there. That's what Republic pays me for. We would, then a little plug about Republic Services. As the recycle has gone in the state of disrepair that it has become, with the waste management landfill closing in Louisville within the next 18 to 24 months, that's going to limit the disposal in the area. The good news is Republic Services does have a facility in Louisville, in Arlington, in Fort Worth, and we also have a landfill. Should either of those fill, we do have a landfill in Itasca that has 130 years left on it. The reason I tell you why that's important, the city of Denton, there are a lot of haulers that were actually taking material there. And recently, the city has decided that they want to use their airspace for their businesses and their residents, so they've capped that. So within the next 30 months, nobody will be allowed to take anything outside of Denton to Denton. So the reason I say that is because certainly I would like for the town of Trophy Club to want to renegotiate with Republic Services and not put this out to bid. However, I do understand that you have to do your due diligence, but I do believe working with Mr. Norwood, I can show him what the area pricing looks like and the service levels, comparing everything, apples to apples, with the commercial, industrial, tonnage, everything, cleanups, free service, all of that. And even for the competitor cities, another part of my job is to make sure I know what's going on. And so I believe that you don't have to go out to bid to get that information. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Norwood, or if you have any questions for me.
All right, so stay there just a minute. Philip Schaffner, you have the floor.
Yeah, as a council member who has gone through several of these things, one with Connie and Greg, or actually I think we went through it several times in the past. I don't know if Nick, if I think we were smart enough to say, like Jerry said, we'll just move on and everything. But for those of you who have not been on council very long, my recommendation is to have the town manager work with Republic to work on an additional or a new contract. I will say that, you know, when I first got on council, I thought, oh, this is going to be a great idea. We'll send this out for bid. And, you know, the people, they really, really like our trash service. And I think that the way we have it set up, I agree with Jerry, is it works great. People love it. I don't think it should be changed. I think that our new town manager is certainly capable of working with Jerry and coming back to us at some point. But I will say that anytime I've ever reached out to Jerry, she's very responsive. She gets back. You know, you'll hear every now and then somebody say, well, my trash wasn't picked up. And somebody will say, well, have you called the number? And they call the number and they respond. So it's, you know, I think it's one of the services that when I go to bed and I don't even think about, because I know it's being handled. And it's been handled from the day that I started on council until now. And really not had any problems. And I've gone to the waste thing, you know, twice a year. My wife has a whole section of stuff that she piles up, and it's time to go. And so, and it's very smooth. It's handled, you know, very well. And I think that was a good move when we turned it over to them and let them start handling it, and we took it off of our staff's plate. So my recommendation is to have Steve work with Jerry and come back to us at some point.
Thank you
But I
very
do
much.
appreciate the service that you provide to our town.
Well, thank you very much for the compliments.
Thank you, Philip. So I put my name in to speak next, so I will recognize myself to speak. I agree with Philip. I think Republic does a good job. I go to a lot of meetings where there are mayors and council member, and one of the things we share amongst each other is which trash service are you using and how well does it work and what are your rates? And so that's a very common topic for us. My experience has been very positive of people getting their trash picked up. You're right, it does happen from time to time. And I would say one area that could be improved would be that aspect of someone saying, you miss me. So the only place I get kind of multiple complaints is they say they called and nobody came, or the line was busy, or something like that. So all the time you're in customer service, those kind of things are going to happen. But typically they're back before long, they're picking up their trash. The question I have is about recycle. So currently, we have these bins, I call them, and I guess maybe the average is 2 bins. I don't know that. I have 2 bins, but I seldom use a second bin. Is it better if that process of recycling is in some type of roll-off versus the bins? Are we to the point that people are doing more than 2 bins all the time, and we should do something different? So that's kind of the question I would say to Steve to maybe look at. I don't know the answer to that. I agree with Philip. I think they provided a good service. I recognize that what we pass along basically the fee for trash. It's on your water bill if you haven't noticed it. So whatever happens to that in a negotiation could affect what you're paying monthly to the town, but it is basically we're just dividing it by the number of homes and not making a increase off that. However, you saw on the first slide that there are a number of items that we don't pay for that are obviously included in that rate. So if you're paying $12 a month or whatever you're paying for refuge, it's helping pay for the recycle day or whatever you call that. I like the idea that you extend it slightly, because that's one of the complaints I get is they go up there early in the morning, they stay in line for an hour and a half, and then by the time they get there, sometimes it's all over with. So they can't really get rid of their stuff. So I appreciate the fact that you're looking at that. I recognize the fact that the recycle industry is struggling. It's really not worth much to recycle plastic anymore. And it's either going to landfill or you're keeping it thinking that the market will return. But until China's really willing to take it back, it probably isn't going to happen. And so that is something that's going to affect us. It very likely could affect the price based on what's happening. And I think the fact that we've had the willingness from Republic to come to us, make a presentation, do a little give and take, readjust the rate slightly, means that our citizens got a good deal. It wasn't a big increase for them, and they do a good job. So that's just my opinion about this. So thank you once again, Jerry, for that. Anybody else want to say anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any way to get the mayors to stop talking about my prices? Just kidding.
Probably not, Jerry. However,
Good question, though.
you're welcome to come to a meeting and talk about the prices.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I don't want to get in a room with all of you at once.
I wouldn't blame you at all for that deal. But thank you for offering that. Yeah, sure. Anybody else? All right, Jerry, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Council,
Ryan.
any other direction you want to give the town manager? This is your time to kind of give him some ideas about things. Anybody want to speak? Yes, Michael.
I'd like to consider the motion of just, like, basically reiterating what you said, Philip, instead of maybe said going straight to contract, but just starting negotiations, whether it's doing it month to month to kind of get us past any type of busy season right now. I just think that coming to a deal between now and April 30th may be a little difficult with everything that's going on. But I lean to your experience and your input back to us. If we can come to a reasonable agreement with the Republic, I echo both of y'all's comments that they've been great to work with, and it's been great service. So just,
Okay.
I defer to you to provide recommendations back to us.
Okay, we could definitely start that, this week, so we can move forward with that and follow up on some of the recycling issues to see what we can do. And as far as, additional hour, that I know that is a very popular program that we do, and we want to make sure that we preserve a lot of those free services that we're getting. I know it's built into the rate, but again, those are nice services for our facilities, for our town events and other things, so we'll make sure those get preserved as well.
Sean?
When is our contract up? Is it April 30th?
Yes, April 30th, 2020.
Have we ever done month to month in the past? Is that possible?
Sure.
And that's something that you can get back to me on, but I'd be interested to see that. But we also have almost a month before we're going to meet again, too.
That's my concern.
So I'd like maybe in the next couple of weeks, we can have some type of information coming back to us before
Right.
the 24th.
And we've had that conversation already, and Republic is willing to do that month to month, And again, I don't see that stretching out till fall. I mean, this is not, I think something May, June would be
Yeah.
very doable.
Okay.
Well, please understand, my intent is never to come into a council meeting and say, your contract ends April 30th. I don't know what you're gonna do May 1st. Because that's just not good partnership. And I live next door in Flower Mound and I drive through here a lot, so that's not going to happen. So we will definitely begin to work through that, and then there may be more questions to you on what you really want to see. And so it'll take us a little bit of time, but we're not gonna leave you without service.
So you mentioned something about you drive through. So I'm just wondering, so if you're trying to get over to South Lake, Colleyville, those other cities, and you come down 377, how do you get there?
114.
Thank you. You knew where I was headed, didn't you? I'm sorry, I just couldn't resist that cut.
I knew what was coming. But
She's been in a few
You know, we
mayor
know your
meetings.
license plate, right? We
Yeah.
know that, okay. We're just kidding about that because lots of people cut through Trophy Club to miss the 114, 377 interchange, and so they're cutting through our town, and as we've had our construction on Trophy Club Drive, there's been less cut through. Of course, there's been more traffic to kind of get through from school and to work and stuff, so hopefully that'll get, Jerry, thanks so much for that, appreciate everybody's comment.
thank you very much.
Steve, any other direction you feel like you need?
No, sir.
All right. Item number 7, discussion of items for future agenda, to include agenda items for consideration on the March 24th council agenda and items from the town council future agenda list. So, council, if you looked at your 3 pages of future agenda items, there were none that said they were due today. So it's all either just passed and we had some updates, or it's coming forward. But this is your time, if you have an item that you wish to add to the future agenda list, to do so. So does anybody, Philip, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'd like to speak on some different things.
You're going
First-
to add it to the list?
Well, I want to talk about the list. First of
Okay,
all, on item 1, it has just Lamont's name. And I think that we need to clarify when something is added to an agenda item, or to have something on the agenda item. Obviously, Nick, you can put anything you want. It just takes you. But council, it takes 2 of us. So I think that before we have staff start researching things and doing things and working and bringing things back to us, perhaps it would be beneficial that items that we place on the agenda, we as council members get somebody else to go in with us, for lack of a better term, sponsor that, however you want to put it, before we actually task staff with researching and doing the legwork for something that potentially could not have support of another council member. That being said, on item 1, I think, Nick, you and I would agree that since we're on the committee, that obviously if you wanted to take Greg's name off and put our name, that would be okay with me, since we're actually on that committee. Or you can leave Greg's name on, I don't care, but I think that you can
I
add
think
my
it's
name.
appropriate to put who's doing it now, so.
Right.
So Sharon, let's change Lamont 11/10/15 to put Schaffner Sanders today's date if you want to.
That way I can take credit, Greg.
It does get a little bit long if we don't get to it, as you notice, if you look at
Right.
that. So you look at all these dates at the top and down below. The original design was to say we want it to come back on council, so we discuss it, as opposed to it just staying on the list and nobody doing anything with it. Philip, I like your suggestion. Sometimes I've been good at conducting the meeting and say, does anybody want to support adding it on the
Right.
agenda? And sometimes I probably have not done that.
Well, I think that probably, and if you go through here, most have two people. The bottom four do not, and so I would recommend taking those bottom four off until the council member can get an additional person to, I mean, two of them are mine. And so, I would suggest taking those four off until a council member can get another sponsor to add that back on. That would be my, recommendation. And I agree, you have been pretty good. Oftentimes, you don't get any comment from anybody, and it's just put on because you don't really know. But our rules of procedure actually require that there be two council members to put anything on the agenda. And I think it's a disservice because nobody may agree with the two items that I have on there. And so it's a disservice to staff to require them to then start researching all this only to come back to find out, oh, well, there was no support from the rest of council. So that's just my suggestion.
All right, Sean?
I was just gonna say the number 7, the overnight parking, both you and I are on that, but we talked about it in December. I don't think it's anything else we need to talk about. I'm fine taking it off.
Yeah, I think take it off.
Anybody on council object to removing 7? All right, so let's remove number 7. All right, Sean, anything else?
Now, Philip, you said you were in favor of taking off the bottom 4.
Well, those are the ones that only have one council member. And like I say, 2 of them are mine. And so until I get with somebody and then come back. And I think it's probably appropriate to, when you present this item, to have somebody already that you've spoken with on council to support you moving that. And then you can say, myself and Sean, for example, want to put this on.
You can add me to number 3.
To which one?
Number 3.
All right, so,
That's EDC and
Well, that's, see, again, that has Nick, and Nick can put anything he wants on the agenda. So,
I'm okay though with if somebody wants to add their name.
okay, well then we can add
I
Sean.
think that's surely reasonable to have that.
Nick won't be here after May.
Wow. Well, then we can take all that
Then
off.
you can take all mine off.
delete.
So I would say, from my standpoint, item number 12, which Philip is on, I believe I supported that at the time. We maybe just didn't record that. So let's add to number 12 that you have Schaffner and Sanders. Because I really wanted something to happen in that area without it.
Yeah, because we had a discussion on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so.
And I actually don't remember putting 13 on. I thought that was just gonna come to us from Chief Cochran, who's, oh, there he is. So, I mean, maybe I did say it, but I don't remember.
13?
Yes.
That's my name on it.
Oh.
It is. Starts with an S. Put your glasses on.
Yes, it is your name. So,
I'm glad you put your glasses on.
but I would support it because I think we did talk about that in the, so you can add my name to that, Nick. You give me one, I'll give you one. There you go.
So my memory is that was discussed at our retreat.
Yes, and
Yes,
I'm
correct,
I'm
yeah.
certainly.
So it was like, there was somewhat of a proposal there about some restructuring of things.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, let's get that back. So.
And I'm
that seemed to
certainly
be
for
reasonable.
that as well.
Is that clear enough that it says review and discuss fire department staff and response model?
Yes.
Okay, y'all understand what that is? Okay. Okay, so, obviously, Councilmember Fleury, because of running for office, is off the council. There were 2 items that she put on. Does anybody want to adopt those, or? All right. So, Carl, which ones?
Well, I put a request in to speak because my computer's acting up, and I don't have a copy of that doggone
Here you go.
document.
Here you go.
Okay. It's here. You want the paper?
Both of them, yeah. Put my name on both.
Okay, so does anybody want to
The
also
Citizen Survey and Loop Road
support
Committee.
that? So there was a citizen survey, item 10, item 11 was Loop Road Committee. So anybody else want to add their name? If not, we'll remove them. Anybody else? All right. So no one wishes to do so. So let's remove 10 and 11 then from that. Carl, if you really want them there, you need to kind of talk to get someone to say why and get it done. And you can always bring it up at the next meeting. So that's the purpose of this item. We can't debate them, which is the problem here. They're there for us to say, we don't want to forget them, we can add to it, change it, but debating pros and cons of it are not what we're here to do. You're basically saying, do I want to have this on a council agenda so I can discuss it and find out more? Does that make sense? So if you're interested in Alicia's ideas of Loop Road Committee, then that's a time to bring it back so we can talk about it. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere. All right? So now, let's see, Philip, did you put yourself back up?
Yeah, so I guess we need to figure out how we do this. Do we just present it, or do we wait until we actually have support from another council member? That's one thing that's really not clear in our rules of procedure, although the rules of procedure do say that it requires two to put anything on the agenda.
On the agenda, but not on this list, per
Yeah,
se.
and so, but again, I go back to, we're having staff do all this, and then it may not have the support. So maybe we need to be clear in our rules of procedure.
So item 8 is actually dealing with rules of procedure.
Yeah, so.
But it says, have a provision for excused absences. It
Yes.
does not open the whole thing.
Yeah, and it probably would be not wise to open that before, until after the election, I would think,
Okay.
For example, one thing that I would like to add to future agenda is talking about the vouchers for the hotels, using hotel occupancy. And so, again, I hate staff to have to research that if there's no support. So.
I support it.
So, I don't know, maybe that's the key. Somebody brings it up. If there's support, like you say, then we put it on. And if there's no support, then we don't put it on.
That's something we need to keep talking about.
Yeah.
I think the key is that we need the discipline among the body that says
Right.
if somebody suggests something that says,
If nobody.
if nobody says anything, we're not going to add it.
Right,
You don't get more than one. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah.
So,
I'm good with that.
so vouchers for hotels is Schaffner Bone. Not for hotels, is it?
It's vouchers for the hotels to use using hotel occupancy tax, right? And Steve can probably word that better than I portrayed it.
All right. Anybody else have something to add or comments about this? All right.
I guess I'd just say that when it comes to like some of the controversial things that are on this list, I'd just be concerned with some of the things on here during the middle of election season. I would hate to side road those topics with an election. I think we should get through the election and then get some of these things that are going to be, that we know are going to be sensitive issues that require due diligence and time through the due process. That would just be my concern.
So I put my name in so I could speak. I disagree with Michael on that. Elections are going to happen every year, basically, unless for some reason there is no opponent. But the way we're structured is every May there's going to be an election. Council should function and keep functioning. If the change happens in an election, then the item will deal with appropriately, in my point. So the fact that someone says a citizen survey is a good thing, well, I don't know if your decision was stay with trash the way it is, then the citizen survey maybe should not include whether you go to roll-offs or not. Well, because you're making that decision based on a contract. Does that make sense? But the topic of a loop road, whether you form a committee or not, is just an action of the council. You either do it or don't do it, in my opinion. And so I don't see that, although we might think that it's political, and someone could campaign for or against that, it is an action of council. Do you want to do it now or not? But after election, somebody might come in and be their first thing to say, I told the people I would do this. So I just am speaking kind of against it. So Michael, you.
I guess let me clarify that. I think that if we're going to do these type of things
and have it turned around and by May 1, I think we should have due diligence of time, instead of just throwing out a citizen survey to formulate questions that we're going to get solid responses of, instead of just maybe, we need to have some framework around it. I agree with you. Governing is going to continue, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I do agree that having elections are good. I'm just saying that before we have staff run around everywhere, that we frame the questions in a manner and frame the topics without rushing. And that's all I'm saying. That's just my concern, is just to kind of rush to get something done. I want to be sure that if there's anything that's done, it's done with proper due diligence. That's all. And we have proper time to formulate what we're wanting to look at. That's all I'm saying.
So I understand it, but if you looked at our list, some things have been there for a long time. And it doesn't mean that being on the list, staff is spending any time on it.
Yeah.
That's a job for the town manager to decide, do we want to deal with this issue? Do I need some research? Do I need something? So, but I understand what you're saying. So Carl?
Well, kind of in line with what Michael just said, it doesn't have to come up right now. But if it's an idea that members of council think has merit for the future, then to have it on the list helps people like me that have a short-term memory loss remember that it's out there. So it's a good way to punt the ball down the field a little ways and then come back to it after a while. But by the same way, we can always bring it up later and put it back on. So.
All right, anybody else? All right, so I think we removed 3, is that right? 7, 10, and 11. We added Sanders to 12, and we added vouchers for the hotels to use with hot funds as an item. Sharon, you think you got those?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So we are now to our meeting agenda date of March the 24th. You can see that we have a presentation from the school board about their bond issue. If you haven't watched the presentation about the bond issue, you should, before you come to that meeting. They are proposing an almost $1 billion bond, is that what it is? 900
It's like
something?
990-something million.
Anyway,
Yeah.
close to that, with a lot of things, and it's really because of the forecasted growth. So it's how many schools am I going to need, where am I going to need them, what type of facilities, based on the forecasted number of new homes. And so they did say in their presentation that they would able to do that and not raise the interest and sinking rate. And the reason for that was there were bonds that they're paying on that would go off, and therefore with the whatever cent they have in their INS rate would still pay for this bond. So that's something that's happening. It's online. There's some discussion about it, and they'll come talk to us. The chamber presentation is part of a discussion that would affect our budget cycle. And the reason for that is that the Metroport Chamber is building a permanent facility. That permanent facility has debt involved with that, and they are proposing that part of that is leasable office space. So they trying to generate a revenue from part of the building that would help pay for it. There are pavers that people can buy to put in a paved way, to have your name out there by the chamber office, or the municipalities can do that. And they're asking for 3 to 5 year pledges from organizations so that they know that they can pay their debt structure. So that's a presentation that the chamber wants to come discuss with the council, so you can decide, do I want to give any direction to staff related to the budget of that, because it's not in our budget today. And part of that has been kind of this concept that said, if you're paying whatever for your membership today, could you add 25% to it? As opposed to making a large upfront contribution, just agree to say, I'll pay 125% for 4 years for this or that kind of thing. So that's the reason the chamber is coming on the 24th, and they've been making presentations about this at every chamber luncheon. Anybody else have any items to ask questions about on the 24th agenda? or that need to be handled more. And I don't know, if you would be having on the 24th agenda something about trash or not. That's a decision that you can make later in the future, as opposed to us saying it's gonna be there. All right, anything else on item 7? All right, it is 8 p.m. We will move to item 8 and move into executive session. Pursuant to the following designated sections of the Texas Government Code, annotated Chapter 551, Texas Open Meeting Act, the council will convene into executive session to discuss the following. A, 551.074, personnel matters, to discuss or deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, resignation, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer. It is really the discussion of an employment contract with the new town secretary that we are negotiating with. And item B, Section 551.082, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations, and it states that it's an area in north of State Highway 114, east of Trophy Club Drive, and west of the town limits. And that's an item that will be discussed tonight in executive session and make a decision about what we do with it at this point. We are in closed session. Council, if you will come to order, we will reconvene into our regular session. It is 9:15 p.m. And item number 9, consider and take appropriate action regarding executive session. Item 1 is employment agreement, and I'll recognize Sean Bone for a motion.
Make a motion to continue negotiation as discussed in closed session for the town and secretary employment agreement.
Motion to approve it.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And to
Motion
approve the
and to
agreement as
approve the agreement
discussed.
as discussed.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show your hands. It is unanimous. And I don't believe there was any other item, and so at 9:16, we are adjourned.